brand new leader, and you're going to oversee the absolute halting of government agencies and government services shutting down because they're not funded. And then you're going to go into an election and say, but vote for me, Canadians.
No, not a chance. This must have been Justin Trudeau's worst week. Not only was he forced to embarrass himself by resigning, he also tried literally begging the NDP and the Bloc to keep the government going after prorogation ended. He even threatened the NDP's precious dental program.
Let's take a look. Trudeau made last-ditch effort to buy time for his government sources. Yeah, there's not going to be a lot of sources that are not going to want to come to the media at this point, since he is the dead man walking, as it were. PM asked NDP and Bloc leaders to support budget, extend his government for several weeks.
After announcing his departure, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau tried to reach an agreement with opposition leaders so that his government would survive a few more weeks in Parliament, Radio Canada has learned. Sources said the day after announcing he would resign on Monday, the Prime Minister personally called the leaders of the New Democratic Party and the Bloc Québécois. He wanted to obtain a commitment from one or the other to vote in favor of the budget appropriations, a vote of confidence, at the end of March, once prorogation had passed, the sources said. That vote of confidence would have ensured the survival of the government for a few more weeks and given the Liberal Party of Canada more time to elect its new leader. But Trudeau's gambit faltered, with both the Bloc and the NDP refusing to back the embattled Prime Minister as they stood by their respective promises that they would bring down the government at the first opportunity. During his conversations with NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, Trudeau argued that NDP support would have made it possible to extend and expand dental care programs and the federal drug insurance plan. An NDP source with knowledge of the conversation said the government already has all the powers it needs. Quote, "For Jagmeet and the NDP, it is not a question of helping the Liberals with their internal bickering and buying themselves time. Jagmeet is focused on the challenges that people face as well as the threat of Trump that weighs on our workers and our economy," end quote, the NDP source said in an email to CBC News. Asked to comment on the Prime Minister's attempt to prolong his government, the response from the leader of the Bloc Québécois was short. Quote, "The Bloc Québécois wants elections as soon as possible," end quote, Yves Blanchet said.
Having failed to secure that extra time, the Liberal Party finally announced the details of an accelerated leadership race Thursday evening. The new Liberal leader will be announced on March the 9th. Liberal authorities found themselves caught in a vice after the resignation of former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland, which eventually led to Trudeau announcing his departure on January 6th. A crucial budgetary deadline could lead to the fall of the government at the end of March.
3 times a year, Parliament must approve the government's budget appropriations, which cover the operating expenses of the government, its program funding and transfers, among other things. The next deadline is scheduled for March 26th, 2 days after the announced return of Parliament. If the minority Liberal government does not find at least one of the 3 leading opposition parties to support it, it will fall, since this vote involves the confidence of the House of Commons. In theory, the government could also fall during a confidence vote on its speech from the throne, which will be delivered at the beginning of the new parliamentary session on March 24th. However, the government has options that would allow it to postpone or avoid holding this vote. The budgetary appropriations vote, however, is unavoidable. The next Prime Minister and new Liberal leader could therefore use the throne speech on March 24th to state their priorities and put forward their vision before diving into an election campaign a few days later. After being elected on March 9th, the new Prime Minister could also go directly to the Governor-General to dissolve Parliament at any time and launch an election campaign.
So the article kind of threw us for a loop when it said that the government has some options to avoid or postpone the confidence vote on the throne speech. So we decided to look it up. Now, we are we are not complete experts on the Green Book and every single procedural outcome by far. However, we did actually find some information on what the article was talking about. So, can the government delay the throne speech? Yes, it can delay the throne speech in two ways that we know of. Number one, now this is going to be the new prime minister, because the new prime minister is going to be in office as of after the 9th of March. So the new prime minister could ask the governor general to prorogue again, which that would not be advisable if that prime minister and new Liberal leader wants any reputation and legitimacy with the Liberal Party.
I think it would also be unprecedented. I don't know if there's ever been like a back-to-back prorogations without a throne speech between them ever. So who knows?
That would be a disaster.
Yeah, PR nightmare.
And the second way is it's just a matter of scheduling. So the prime minister does have the option of asking the governor general to schedule the throne speech later, citing that, well, we need to get to this supply vote to fund the government, so let's focus on that and we'll deal with the throne speech after. So those are the two ways that we know that they can actually delay the throne
speech. Yeah. Something else that they could do, which this kind of makes sense to me. It's not usually done from what we've researched, but the Green Book on page 380, it's actually in the notes. It says that the standing orders do not specify that a request for funds must appear in the speech from the throne. So typically when they do a speech from the throne, they are requesting funds from Parliament for the session, for the new session. And that's why it's a confidence vote. But the Green Book says that you don't have to. So we're thinking that's one way that they could avoid a confidence vote at the speech from the throne is to not request funds. But they would be doing so a few days later with that budget.
But also imagine this, and this is where they would have to get, I don't know, some sort of procedural prodigy guru genius to navigate this. A government that is laying out an agenda, but saying, we're not going to pay for anything. How is that even possible?
Yeah, I was gonna say that's impossible. That's not gonna happen.
Right. So like how are you going to do anything? Like our mandate is we're just gonna sit here and be cheerleaders. So okay, so your mandate is you're not going to do anything. Okay, that's great. That's not gonna go over well with Canadians either. So the other thing to consider is there hasn't been a confidence vote that was removed from a throne speech that we could find any evidence of over the last 50 years. It's convention.
Right, which means that they, in the last 50 years at least, have always had a confidence vote tied to the throne speech.
Right.
Now, just assuming that it's not this time, it's going to come back to haunt them just a few days later when they request supply for the budget. So even if they put off the confidence vote from the throne speech, they're going to be faced with a confidence vote just a few days later.
Right. So the only other way, if they want to try and get around this, is to prorogue. And then what's going to happen? Well, you're going to have these agencies that aren't going to be funded. So, and that is going to be the choice of the government. The choice of the government is going to be like, yeah, well, we're going to prorogue and we're intentionally not going to fund these government agencies. Well, that's not going to go over well with Canadian people because then everything starts to shut down.
Well, I can't see that happening at all, to be honest. Like, I think my chances of getting hit by lightning are better than that happening.
Again, brand new leader, right? Brand new leader, and you're going to oversee the absolute halting of government agencies and government services shutting down because they're not funded, and then you're going to go into an election and say, but vote for me, Canadians.
No, not a chance at all.
So
there is a confidence vote coming, whether it's going to be March 24th with the speech from the throne, or whether it's going to be March 26th when they request budget funds. It's going to be one of those days.
Now, the article did state one thing, and this, I think, would be very wise of the new leader. So the new leader is going to take over on March 9th. I think the best and probably most popular thing that leader could do is immediately go to the Governor General and say, dissolve Parliament, we're going to an election. Because they know over half of Canadians, I think it was like 60% the last time we saw, and that's everybody, wants an election.
And they're really upset. Like, Canadians are upset, us included, that Parliament is currently prorogued. So it would probably give that leader a leg up if they were the one to stop prorogation and go to an election. I'm not saying they'd win, but they might be a little bit more popular than if they don't do it.
Right. Put it this way. It would be wise to do it. They're not going to have people. It's the difference between people aren't going to like them for it, but you're not going to have people as pissed off. Like, that's the thing.
Yeah, you might not get any votes, but people aren't going to be as angry.
So, and this just comes down to Justin Trudeau has screwed over the Liberal Party with what he did and how he's done it in his resignation. And speaking of resignation, so we've seen a lot of people that are really stuck because there's some out there that are suggesting that you have to look at what he said. You have to say he intended to resign. Well, ladies and gentlemen, here's something directly from the Liberal Constitution. What Tanya and I have been saying is this is him tendering his resignation. It's giving his notice. He can't take it back. It's literally him saying, I'm going to resign, and he can't take that back. So this is directly from the Liberal Constitution. If the leader publicly announces an intention to resign, or if the leader delivers to the national president a written resignation or a request to call a leadership vote, then the leader ceases to be the leader on the earlier of the appointment of an interim leader and when a new leader is elected by registered Liberals. Now, since Justin Trudeau is that interim leader, then it's basically automatic. He cannot take that back because he publicly declared his intent to resign. Ergo, that's his resignations. He cannot take that back.
And he will no longer be leader as soon as the new leader is elected. He's currently kind of like the interim leader. It's like when you're at work and you give your 2 weeks or your 4 weeks notice, whatever it happens to be. He's given the country his 11 weeks notice, and as soon as the new leader is selected, then he will cease to be leader.
Now, do we blame people for questioning, being skeptical of Justin Trudeau? Absolutely not. Absolutely not, especially after all of the lies that he has continued to tell throughout his entire, his reign.
Well, and especially after the destruction that Trudeau's Liberal Party has caused to Canadians. Like, I don't say this lightly, but we're all traumatized. Like, we have all lost. We have all suffered. And it's no surprise that so many people are skeptical. We've received many, many emails about theories of how he could possibly stay on as leader or stay on indefinitely. And we are very pleased to say that with this convention within the Liberal Party's constitution, he's done as soon as that new leader is elected, which is going to be March 9th.
Yeah, he has an expiry date, so there's nothing he can do. The deal with Justin Trudeau right now is he's completely boxed in. It's a matter of time.